We have no choice. We must lower our taxes. And your senator, Claire McCaskill, she must do this for you. And if she doesn't do it for you, you have to vote her out of office.
Around the same time when Donald Trump called for her ouster from the Senate, Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill became a target of a phishing attempt executed by the same Russian intelligence agency responsible for the DNC hacks of 2016. According to reporting by the Daily Beast, McCaskill is one of the most vulnerable Democrats according to the Daily Beast, McCaskill is one of the most vulnerable Democrats up for re-election this year, running in a toss-up state that Trump won by 19 points. McCaskill confirmed an unsuccessful hacking attempt was made, saying, quote, "I will not be intimidated. I've said it before and will say it again. Putin is a thug and a bully." My mega panel is back with me, and also joining the panel is Karine Jean-Pierre, senior advisor for MoveOn.org. Before we get to you, Karine, I want to go back to Malcolm on this. We know it's happening again. We know at least one of the people it's happened to. Donald Trump this week, on Tuesday, puts out a tweet saying, "I'm very concerned Russia will be," and I don't read his tweets anymore, but we'll read this one, is that Russia will be fighting very hard to have an impact on the upcoming election based on the fact that no president with a capital P has been tougher on Russia than me, okay? They'll be pushing very hard for the Democrats. They definitely don't want Trump. As an former intelligence officer, Malcolm, what does that say to you, that he is trying to say that the Russians will interfere? He admits it, but it's going to be to help the Democrats.
You know, I've sat on this show, and I don't know how many times that I said this, that the next election, if there's a blue wave, the Russians could they could carry out another attack on the electorate, either through registrations or even direct messing with the ballots, in order to sow massive chaos and delegitimize the potential win or loss of whoever in this election. And that would be tantamount to setting the grounds for civil war, really, to be quite honest. Donald Trump is gaslighting us on this issue. I don't know where this vulnerability in him comes from. Oh, like Clint said, only Robert Mueller is going to be able to get to the bottom of whatever debt he has to the Russians. But he is definitely afraid of having it found out what actually happened the last time. That's why he carries out this supposed election security panel where he meets for 30 minutes and goes to a golf course. This is a key component of the Russian strategy.
Well, then, David Cay Johnston, please explain it to us. What could it be? Donald Trump has been completely immune to sexual scandal. His base literally does not care about any of that. It wouldn't hurt him even if they did have some sort of sexual compromise on him. What is it that, I mean, if Donald Trump is afraid of the Russians, then why would he be, in your view?
Well, first and foremost, the fact that Donald is coated in heavy Teflon says something very bad about the state of democracy in America. And Putin's underlying goal here is to disrupt and destroy democracy. You can read his own words about this in Russian publications about it. Donald knows perfectly well that he is deeply indebted to Russian interests, Russian-speaking interests, for money. Where did he, when nobody would loan him money, where did he come up with all this cash to buy places? What commitments has he made? What's the full extent of his involvement with the Russian gangster Felix Sater, who's been able to manipulate the federal government into not going to prison for running a $40 million stock scam? There's plenty that Donald has to worry about coming out. And when he says they're trying to help the Democrats, you know, that's almost right out of the old Soviet playbook, which was if nobody trusts anybody, who wins? Whoever's in power.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this. You know, we've talked about the fact that the FBI is a separate compartmentalized organization that, you know, literally had to find indictable cases. It's not as if they could have themselves necessarily stopped what happened. You had the intelligence community that was much more hair on fire about what was going on and attempting to do something about it. Now we actually have a preview of what's going on. I want to play Christopher Wray, the FBI director, talking about the potential for Russian interference in 2018 real quick. Here it is.
We haven't yet seen an effort to target specific election infrastructure this time, but certainly other efforts, what I would call malign influence operations, are very active, and we could be just a moment away from it going to the next level.
And really quickly, the malign influence against one specific person, Claire McCaskill of Missouri, up for Senate re-election. Here is Adam Schiff, who is the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, talking about what we now know is a hacking attempt against her. Take a listen.
It's really ominous to consider that the same Russian actors may have been involved in trying to hack a vulnerable Democratic senator's campaign right around the same time that President Trump called for her ouster from the Senate. But what is also distressing to me as the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee is to learn about these efforts by the Russian hackers from comments by a Microsoft employee at the Aspen Summit. Rather than be hearing about this from our intelligence community, it shows just how unprepared we are.
So you know, before I'm going to bring Karine in a minute, but I want to come to you on this, Nayyera, because you worked at the State Department. I feel like the first time we were all learning about it in real time, mainly from Malcolm on TV, and so we're all acting in the moment.
Right.
The Obama administration was agonizing because the response to it would have been a political response. They were, you know, Mitch McConnell made it clear he would have attacked them had they come out and been hair on fire in the way that Emmanuel Macron was. Right. Emmanuel Macron said Putin is after us. They publicly announced what was going on in France, and Emmanuel Macron survived that. What could have been done, and in this case, now that we have a preview of what they're doing, what should be being done?
I think part of the political calculus at the time was, let's not undermine Hillary Clinton, who was everybody at that point and in political circles thought was going to win. They did not want to delegitimize her election either and wanted to stay out of it. In hindsight, though, we've seen in writings of former Obama administration officials, including President Obama himself, there is agonizing over if they did an injustice to the American people. The president sits at the intersection of domestic and international policy, right? CIA is not allowed legally to interfere in the United States.
Right.
FBI can't do anything overseas. The president is supposed to be the one making these policy decisions of how do you connect the two. After the election, President Obama imposed sanctions on Russians, kicked out Russian agents, shut down what were known spy facilities almost immediately after the election. Donald Trump is now trying to take credit for those actions that happened in the Obama administration, has been directed by Congress to impose additional sanctions, has done none of that. Instead, he has decided to invite this adversary personally to the White House during the next election, like giving a former KGB agent direct access on U.S. soil. That is an abdication of the commander-in-chief responsibility the White House has. Absolutely. That is fundamentally what the Putin regime is relying on, is the chaos of a lack of leadership.
Yeah, you're getting an amen from Malcolm Nance on that he seems to be opening the door. So let me get Karine Jean-Pierre in here, because if the president won't act, I mean, in fact, I think he's also open to going to Moscow himself. You know, he's sort of planning more friendship with Russia. So if you're not going to get action out of the administration, if the Congress, at least the Republicans who control it, are more focused on protecting the president politically than they are in necessarily acting, then what can these candidates be doing differently? Claire McCaskill put out a statement. It's very benign. We know that there were 3 people targeted. Let's put up the list of the Democratic senators who are the most vulnerable. These are the 10 Democrats who were elected in states where Donald Trump won. Claire McCaskill, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, North Dakota's Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, which is a state Trump apparently really is fixated on, Montana's Joe Tester, Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin, Ohio, Sherrod Brown, Florida's Bill Nelson, and Debbie Stabenow. Karine, would you advise any Democrat who believes that they have been the target of these same kind of phishing campaigns that were done to Hillary Clinton to come out with it, Emmanuel Macron style?
Yes, I think they should, absolutely. Look, the only thing these candidates can do at this point, because Donald Trump is not going to have their back at all. He doesn't have the country's back, and he doesn't have Democrats' back, because according to him, he thinks that Russia's going to help Democrats. And the thing about that tweet as well is when he tweeted that, he knew the McCaskill threat had occurred. And so there is no bottom to Donald Trump. There is no truth either. Never have we seen before a small man, such a small man, hold such a large office. And I'll throw in one more reason I think that he's doing this. His ego is so large, his ego is so big that it's preventing him from acting, from doing something to stop, to defend this country from the attack of Russia, because he believes that the moment that he acknowledges this attack in his twisted thinking, then it will diminish his victory. So instead of protecting the country, he's of course thinking about himself. But as it comes to these candidates, the only thing they could do is work with law enforcement, work with the FBI, hire cyber experts to work with them on this, because they're not going to have. We saw House Republicans vote down funding for states to get more money to protect themselves from election security. So they're not going to get any help. So they have to do it themselves. And yes, I think it should be out there. It should be out there to the public, because we can't trust Donald Trump. He's not going to tell us the truth. So as American people who are going to go and vote, we need to know what's going on out there.
But Karine, then what do you make of sort of what seems to be, at least from the outside looking in, the reticence of the Democrats to really lean in on this issue? They seem to not really want to talk about Russian interference. They want to run on local issues, which is important, the economy and health care. But I will reiterate again that Emmanuel Macron was attacked in exactly the same way when he ran for the presidency of France. They went full bore. This is what's happening. Don't believe any of this garbage you're seeing. Had Hillary Clinton come out and said, hello, Pizzagate is a part of a conspiracy. I mean, I don't know. I guess a lot of viewers may be, along with me, wondering why Democrats do seem to be so reticent to lean in and say, yes, this is happening.
Right. I think because Democrats are running on issues, right? The number one issue right now that's really resonating with voters is health care. While the Russia interference is important to voters, I think it's about 60%, it's not that they shouldn't run on it, but there are other issues that are very important to folks. And everyone, every folks who are running in competitive House, Democratic House districts, they're going to run the different type of races that work for them. But yes, I think that as we go on, I mean, we're talking about Russia now. We've been talking about Russia for the last 2 weeks because of the Helsinki conference and meeting, summit, whatever it was, that we saw 2 weeks ago. So it's been out there, but it's going to be up to the folks running in the states. And to Claire McCaskill's credit, she's been talking about Russia. I think that's one of the reasons she is in kind of their crosshairs, because she's been talking about Russia since 2010, and they've been coming after her since then.
And well, Clint Watts, I wondered then if we're going to wake up on the morning after the election and start doing another round of stories about elections that were stolen or that were that were attacked by a foreign adversary, as we had all of this 2-year warning that it could happen. We know that there were 21 states that were targeted by those same Russian hackers who were indicted. We now have indictments of a group of GRU-linked Russians who attacked our election systems in key states like Florida, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois. We know this happened. Are we going to wake up on the morning after the 2018 election and say, it happened again?
I'm not sure. I think in terms of what the Russians are pursuing, there's only a few congressional races that would make any significance for them or any gain. But ultimately, we should remember the long-run goal of this subversion technique is for us to doubt our own democracy, our institutions, and our elected leaders, to think that they aren't legitimate. They maybe didn't get there on their own, or something was shady. If we remember back to 2016, election-rigged voter fraud was a major theme that was used. I'm sure they would like to reintroduce that again. And a good way to do that is to create provocational hacking attempts, specifically on voter rolls, just to sow doubt so that you can then influence around it. We should also remember that hacking to power influence comes in the year before the election. So what you saw with Senator McCaskill, those attacks were starting in about August of 2017. This matches up with the playbook we saw from the Kremlin, where they started hacking in the fourth quarter of 2015. And next year, whoever's running for president, they should also start looking. If they're going to use this playbook again, if Russia makes the decision, they will do that, and they will forecast it by doing hacking. And that hacking will start about 15 months from now if they're going to use this technique again against the United States. So we know what the technique looks like, but whenever we're trying to decide how we're going to combat it, it's taken 18 months for this administration to have one 30-minute meeting about how we're going to mount a defense against Russian influence. If the president's worried about the Democrats winning in November because the Russians are tipping it towards him, well, he is the president of the United States. He can do something about it if he wants to. I don't know why he has to get on Twitter and cry about it.
Yeah, and not only him, Malcolm, but the Republicans. I mean, one would think that it's a bipartisan issue, that we do not want foreign adversaries attacking our elections. But the Republicans are, I mean, Mitch McConnell came out and said, oh, they better not mess with us. Okay, last time he told President Obama, you better not say anything about it because I will say that you're being partisan for Hillary Clinton. In the indictment against those Russian officials who participated in the attack on our election, this is from the indictment, on or about August 15, 2016, the conspirators posing as Guccifer 2.0 received a request for stolen documents from a candidate for U.S. Congress. The conspirators responded using the Guccifer 2.0 persona and sent the candidate stolen documents related to the candidate's opponent. We do forget that it wasn't just Donald Trump. Are you concerned, Malcolm, with 2 years advance warning that we are still going to wake up on the morning after the election saying this happened again, but it happened to candidates for Senate and House?
Yeah, I'm concerned, and Clint's right. It may not happen at the tactical level in races which were really close and somebody had more influence operations carried out against them or compromise put out against them. I think if they're going to go after it, they're going to go after the whole system. And when I mean the whole system, I mean they could just massively run a program and try to get into voter databases, even if they're not successful. So as Clint called it, provocation actions out there throughout the electorate. But on this time, maybe they do it against the Republicans in order to stoke that unrest and to create a situation where a win would be completely considered invalid by 1/3 of the United States. Now, I want you to just think about that for a moment. Again, that's the fundamental basis for civil war. And that, of course, would allow Trump to consolidate power if he wanted to. I don't know. It's a nightmare scenario. But what we should be doing is every person needs to understand their individual vote is securable if they vote early, if they get out there and they mobilize other people to vote, and we make it so that there is no margin that this could have an effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Very important to vote early.
Right.
Yes.
And the
Paul,
relationship between this and the Michael Cohen revelation is that if President Trump knew, Michael Cohen said he didn't only know about the meeting with the Russians, he authorized it.
Right.
He wanted it to happen, which means that he wanted to work with the Russians to steal the election. And so we don't have to wonder why President Trump isn't being more proactive. It's not ineptness, it's not ignorance. If we believe what's coming out of the Mueller probe, it's that President Trump is actively working with the Russians to subvert our democracy.
And then, Nick, I think then we run up against the question, well, what can you do about it, right? There's a finding that even if, and this is a huge projection because this is not on the table yet, if Mueller were to find crimes that were involving the President of the United States, either before he were president or obstruction afterwards, after he was elected, what actually could be done about it? The Republican House of Representatives have made it pretty clear that they're not interested in doing anything to Donald Trump or in holding him accountable. So what could, in theory, Mueller do?
Well, I think
even if he finds crimes.
Yeah, I think if he finds a crime, I think if they really find the evidence that looks like is there, that he basically committed treason, that he conspired with the Russians to stage the release of those emails. Now, don't forget, going back to that June 9th meeting at Trump Towers relating to sanctions and the lifting of sanctions on Russia, that was the quid pro quo for the help in the election. So you've got a bribe being conferred upon the president-elect, and the statute permits that in a certain period of time. So it seems to me with that kind of evidence, and if it's strong, the only remedy we really have is for Mueller to bring an indictment against Donald Trump. And if that's what the evidence is, that's where it should go.
And a way that that's accomplished is he's got the goods on John Jr. now. There's a clear perjury case to be made against him. And so he goes to the president and say, resign, agree not to run for re-election, and we won't go after your boy.
Wow. This is a great panel. I wish we could do another hour, but we can't with these. We have to let these guys go have a day. Nayyera Hawk is going to be back. We're letting all the guys go. Guys, thank you very much. Paul Butler, Malcolm Nance, Clint Watts, David Cay Johnston, Nick Ackerman. No, actually letting Karine Jean-Pierre. Karine, we'll have to have you back as well. All right, so Karine's going to come back another time. You're in a beautiful location, so we're going to let you go have fun. All right, up next.